And this is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm here with Dennis Henson as we continue this series of programs on real impact, daily inspiration. I don't want to say, Dennis, first of all, thank you so much for being with us again. This is really a lot of fun putting these together, and I'm so glad that we met through an interview. I had you on the program to talk about your work and the book and so forth, and it's great now to have the two of us working together on this series. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Richard. I'm really enjoying this.
One of the aspects of this that we're going to talk about as we continue has to do with our attitude, our philosophy. In a previous program, you used the word faith. And one thing that we need to keep in mind when we're talking about faith is that faith is not based on anything in the material world. Faith has nothing to do with the material world. It has to do with you and your inner life, if you will. And we'll talk more about that. But one of the aspects that we're going to talk about and the story we're going to listen to here has to do with what we put out, or in this case, whatever you sow, whatever you put out there, whatever. I remember hearing when working at the Christian radio station, cast your bread upon the water, those kinds of things, and sowing seeds, and so forth. And so let's take a listen to this story, and then we will continue on.
Whatever you sow, that shall you also reap. Author unknown. If you plant honesty, you will reap trust. If you plant goodness, you will reap friends. If you plant humility, you will reap greatness. If you plant perseverance, you will reap victory. If you plant consideration, you will reap harmony. If you plant hard work, you will reap success. If you plant forgiveness, you will reap reconciliation. If you plant openness, you will reap intimacy. If you plant patience, you will reap improvements. If you plant faith, you will reap miracles. But if you plant dishonesty, you will reap distrust. If you plant selfishness, you will reap loneliness. If you plant pride, you will reap destruction. If you plant envy, you will reap trouble. If you plant laziness, you will reap stagnation. If you plant bitterness, you will reap isolation. If you plant greed, you will reap loss. If you plant gossip, you will reap enemies. If you plant worries, you will reap wrinkles. If you plant sin, you will reap guilt. Be careful what you plant today, for that will determine what you reap tomorrow. The seeds you scatter will either make the future better or worse. You can either enjoy the fruits of your harvest or deal with the bitter weeds of your poor choices. Do things today that will have a positive impact on tomorrow. Dennis J. Henson. The print version of this book makes a great gift for graduation, Christmas, wedding parties, birthdays, groomsmen, and grandparents. It may be found at www.realimpact.life.
So, Dennis, when we talk about sowing, we are talking about, and actually it could be worded in so many different ways. There's the karmic concept, karma, what you put out comes back to you, and kindness, it does something to us and for us when we are kind to others and when we are kind to ourselves. So let's talk a little bit about this particular story of sowing seeds. What kind of seeds are we talking about here?
When I met my first mentor, he told me that there were certain laws of nature that if you live within those laws, then things were going to be pretty easy for you. You're going to have some success. People were going to respect you. Everything's going to go pretty well. And if you try to fight against those laws, you're going to have a hard life. Things are never going to go the way you hoped that they would or you wanted them to. Well, then I stopped him and said, okay, where's the book? I want to read about the laws. Where's the book, The Laws of Nature? And he said, well, as far as he knew, there wasn't one that you had to bind those laws. It's a life search. And that was in 75 or 75. And for the last 50 years, I've been searching them out, and I am writing a book called The Seven Secrets of Success. And today I was thinking, well, that's seven of the laws of nature, because there's not just seven.
Mm-hmm.
They go on and on and on. And one of the laws of nature is when you plant a seed, you're probably going to get back an awful lot more of whatever the seed you planted was.
Mm.
And whether you plant it in the ground or you plant it in here, it's the same result. So just like what you just played, whatever you sow, whatever you plant, that's one of the reasons that Real Impact Daily Inspiration is so powerful. It's the seed.
Mm-hmm.
It's the seed that I planted in my students' head that caused them to go out and become extremely successful business people. It's just amazing. It's amazing to me. And in the very front of the book, the first thing I did was I went to my students and said, would you write something about how the teaching helped you? And it's just amazing what they came back with. I mean, when you read the front of the book, it's just mind-boggling. But all that we did was we just planted these seeds in their head, and they grew, and they became super successful business people. Well, the same thing could happen with if you want to become a religious person, or if you wanted to become someone who helped other people, to form some kind of a charitable organization. It can be anything. But whatever seed you plant and nourish and water, then that's what you're going to get back. And it's just a law of nature. You can't fight it. It's not something that, well, that may work or that may not. Well, if you don't think it'll work, you're right, it won't.
Mm-hmm.
It's a law of nature, okay? But now, if you have faith, just the faith of a mustard seed. Where did I find that? It's in one of those books back there. Okay, just of a mustard seed. And you can change everything
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to grow and multiply many, many times over. Many times over. Well, knowing that law of nature is a life-changing thing.
Yeah.
And so reading this book, there's hundreds of little things in there like that you'll realize, oh, I see, that's how it works. And the great things about law of nature, once you learn them, they never change.
Right.
Gravity's always the same. You never let go of an apple and it goes up to the tree, ever. That's never going to happen. It's always going to fall to the ground because that's one of the laws of nature. But that's just a simple one, gravity and inertia and magnetism. They seem like magic. They're not. It's just a law of nature. And if you live with a nose, I mean, you have to get out of the way. And sometimes when gravity, if there's an avalanche, you better get out of the way because you're going to get killed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Once those rocks start coming down, it's a pretty good idea to say, well, I believe that gravity works. So I need to move.
It's funny. Speaking of gravity, I find it fascinating how little people know about it and how rarely they use it. Now, that may sound kind of strange that they rarely use it, but my example goes back to what we talked about in a previous program about the car. Now, I happen to live up on the hill above Santa Barbara, and we go from zero sea level to 2,200 feet. Now, going up, of course, it takes that engine, needs the power to get me up that hill. And of course, I'm not using the brake, obviously. I shouldn't be using the brake going uphill because, why would I be braking unless, of course, someone's going in front of me slow. But coming downhill, this is fascinating to me. Now, I've only been driving since I was 38. And so that's not very long. But what I understood about gravity living up here is I heard about people having to have their brakes fixed every, I don't know what the number of miles is, but more often than people who didn't live up here. And I thought, well, why in the heck are they braking? Why aren't they using the engine as the governor of their speed? Put it in a lower gear. Yeah, keep your foot near the brake, certainly, but let the motor, let the engine determine how fast you're going to go. Because if I've got it in neutral, I'm going to fly down. Okay, we don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. And you don't necessarily want to have it in drive because then because I've done this. I'm coming down the hill and I've got it in drive and I'm going faster and faster. And I go, oh, I better slow down, better slow down, better slow. I put it in third. I don't have to slow down because the car isn't going to go that fast. And I'm going the speed limit and maybe a little bit below because it's 55. That's quite a speed when you're going downhill. But I allow gravity to work for me, or I work with it in unison to save my car's brakes, especially. But the motor isn't going to burn out on me, because that's what it was designed to do. Would you say that there are certain aspects of our lives that function in that fashion? You talk about the natural laws and so forth. It seems to me that we have that same kind of thing, that we've got a governor, if you will, or I don't know. Do you think that maybe our sixth sense, well, not our sixth sense, but our intuition, that still small voice, that gut feeling is sort of along those same lines, that it's wanting to guide us along this path that we're taking? And you talked about it in a previous program as well, about how, well, I was going down this direction and it was kind of nice, but all right, I'm ready to move on to other things. And then it turns me a different way. And the same thing happens down the road. And okay, now we're going to go this way. And what do you think about that analogy? You think that applies?
Absolutely, Richard. So many people are just coasting along and letting whatever happens happen. It's like you were saying, you had the education and the knowledge to realize that the transmission would slow the car and you didn't have to ruin your brakes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was education. That's one of the 7 secrets of success is wisdom. You should, in all areas of your life, seek wisdom. The more you know about driving a car on an incline or starting a business or running a school or becoming a doctor or an attorney or whatever it is, the more you seek the wisdom. Well, how do you do that? Well, it's so simple. You read something every day or you listen every day to something that makes you wiser. And forming a habit of doing that changes everything, because you had the wisdom to know that, well, I don't really need to be going downhill in neutral and using my brakes. It's going to I'm going to either have a wreck or it's going to ruin my car. Cooper wants to be in on our discussion, but it's all about learning to operate in life, learning to operate your vehicle, learning to operate a business, learning to operate. And the way you do that is by learning from someone else who's made all the mistakes, and you can learn to do better and avoid the mistakes. If you're going to learn from mistakes, it's so much better to learn from someone else's mistakes. And all of those mistakes are written somewhere in a book.
It's fascinating to me that I don't know, and I may be giving people a little too much credit because it just makes perfect sense. It's like, how is this not common sense? That people would think this way, but it isn't. That's the funny thing, and I guess that's the one thing that I hear over and over again when talking about the concept of common sense. It's not very common. It doesn't seem to be anyway. But that's where you and I come in, and we share these ideas with people, saying, "Hey, how'd you like to, if we want to stick with the automobile analogy, how'd you like to make your car last longer? Would you love to watch that odometer flip over to 300,000 and your car is still running like a top?" Well, there are ways that that can happen. And again, there's no guarantee, you know, but by the same token, again, you play the numbers, you play the odds, the statistics, and I think you run a better chance of making it to 300,000 just by taking basic, simple care. Matter of fact, do you know that I even consider a car wash to be part of the basic maintenance of a vehicle? Because as the dirt piles up as you drive and gets into what I'll refer to as the joints of the vehicle, where the pieces come together, and that dirt is like a grinder, and it starts grinding the pieces that are coming together, and starts wearing them out. And then all of a sudden you start hearing rattles. I don't know about you, but there are people that kind of thing drives them. Where is that rattle coming from? I can't find it. And they take it to the mechanic and they want the mechanic to find it. Well, shoot, if you just washed your car every so often, it might not be rattling. Like I said, there are no guarantees, but I think the odds are probably in your favor that it wouldn't. So it seems to me the same thing is true with us as human beings. If you just take care of the little things, you won't have creaks and so forth in your joints along the way. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard. Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, it's funny that you said that because I was reading a story today, and I do read about how 1%, a 1% improvement can make a massive change over time. Where this coach over in England took over a cycling team, and they hadn't won a medal in forever. I mean, they were just really terrible. And he had the philosophy that if he could just change 1% every single day, that they would become better and possibly be eligible to win some of the medals. One of the things that he found was when they were moving the bikes from place to place, storing them in a truck, that dirt was accumulating in the bottom of the truck, which was causing wear and tear on the bikes. So what he did was cleaned it out and painted the bottom white so that it was easy to see if there was any dirt, and it kept them immaculate, and it made their cycling work better. That wasn't very much. That was like a small thing, but then he did other things day after day. He changed this and this. He changed what they ate. He changed how they slept. It just went well. Before long, they won 7 out of the 10 gold medals from those incremental changes. Well, there again, it just falls right into place. What I'm trying to get people to do is make this little change and incrementally do something every single day to take a step in a better direction. And it will change. Everything will change. And it'll become much better, much quicker. And people appreciate having taken the journey.
Exactly. I said it before. I'll say it again. The details will make you or break you. A little detail of our own is we need to take another quick break, and we're going to do that and continue on with Dennis Henson and Real Impact, realimpactbook.com. Get your free copy of the e-version, and we certainly hope you'll do that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. We are talking about cars. That's right. This is car talk. No, not exactly. It's an analogy that we're using here, a metaphor, if you will, because it's very important to think about things from different perspectives, and a lot of people can relate to the automobile analogy. I didn't think I would, and all of a sudden, what happens when I turn 36? I get a lens implant, and the next thing I know, I'm driving. Well, now I am driving, and I've got to be aware of how I'm taking care of the vehicle I'm in, And of course, my father's words come back to mind about, doing the basics, oil and lube and filter. Matter of fact, I used to work, Dennis, in a Texaco station in the service bay. And I would do oil changes and then change the filter and so on and so forth. And I do the lube where you take the little the gun and you'd spray it, you'd squeeze it into the, I think it was the Zert. I think that's what they called it, which I thought was a weird name. That's a little a point where you put the grease in there, and I used to do those kinds of things, and I learned a lot in that regard. I never became a member of a pit crew, but mind you, but still, it was good. It was a good education to learn. I also learned that engines, when they first come in off of the roadway, they are darn hot. They are very hot. Um, this program is hot too because we've got some great information, inspirational information for you from Dennis's book, Real Impact. That is daily inspiration that you can tap into. We hope that you will do that by going to realimpactbook.com. And we certainly hope that you'll do that. Dennis, we've been talking an awful lot here. We were talking about, of course, the story at the front end of this particular segment about sowing seeds. And one of the thoughts that came to me as you were talking earlier about, sowing a seed and so forth, and what kind of seed, my mind flashed to the hillside right outside our porch, our screened-in porch. And when I look out there, even in the wintertime, when there gets enough rain, you start seeing the little green sprouts of winter grass. But then when the spring rolls around, of course, the winter grass sort of dies off and is taken over by the spring grass, and it's not that much of a change. But then you see all kinds of what a lot of people will refer to as weeds. Well, guess what? The seeds for those weeds have been in the ground for a long time. And I go out there in the late spring, early summer, and I start cutting those weeds down when they get 1.5 to 2 feet tall, to obviously to minimize fire danger and so forth, but also to make it look nicer. Now, I wish that I had, like my dad had, a beautiful Bermuda grass lawn. He kept it looking, the dark green color of Bermuda grass after he'd watered it and mowed it and fertilized it and all of that kind of stuff. It was absolutely beautiful. And then we'd go out and play football on it and tear it up. But But that's something too that we need to talk about, and that is that there are seeds that have been planted in during our lifetime up to this moment that we'd like to remove. We'd like to pull that, metaphorically speaking, that plant out of the ground. And so there's no more seed with that quote unquote weed that has all those little thistles and thorns and so forth. We want to have that pristine lawn without crabgrass or dandelions or whatever the case may be. Is there a method? And then you could even talk to us a little bit about how the natural law plays into this in terms of not only planting the seeds that will bring about the results we want, but getting rid of those plants, i.e. seeds, that we don't want, that have been there from the beginning or from an early part of our lives.
Yes, Richard. Jim Rohn used to say, the weeds will take your garden, that everything that's good will be attacked. So you just have to understand that there's always going to be something that's going to try to take whatever good that you're producing and make it, destroy it or make it bad or take it over. Well, a farmer knows that. So when he plants corn, my mother grew up on a farm. She used to tell a story. She had 7 brothers and sisters. And my grandfather drove a taxi. He had the first taxi in Alabama, or one of them. And he would give them all a hoe, and they would go out and start hoeing the weeds back from whatever they planted, either the corn or the oak or whatever it was. And so they would when the hoe hit the ground, it would hit a rock and you could hear the click, 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 click. Well, the farm was really big and the rows would kind of go over a hill and to a tree line. And so when they would get over the hill and at the tree line, they would sit down and pick up a rock and all 7 of them would hit the hoe. So they could sit there for 30 or 45 minutes. And as far as the people back at the home was concerned, they were still hoeing. They were still hoeing the weeds. My grandfather would come home for lunch sometimes, and he would watch them out hoeing the weeds back. And he would go out and he'd say, "No, that's not how you do it." He'd grab the hoe from them and he'd start hoeing really fast. He'd say, "Oh, you're going to do it like this." And he'd do that for maybe 30, 45 seconds and expect them to go and hoe like that for the rest of the afternoon. But then they would go over the hill and sit down at the tree line and start hitting the hoe with their rocks. But anyway, there's always going to be weeds,
Yeah.
so you have to realize that, and you have to take action to do away with the weeds. That's just part of it.
Yeah.
You can't expect it just everything to just be perfect. It's never going to be that way.
Can't have a garden without weeds.
That's right.
My
That's
mother,
part of it.
yeah, my mother planted some lantana in a garden that was sitting below the window, the front window of my sister's bedrooms. I had 4 sisters. They all occupied one room. And so my mother planted these lantana. So in the summertime, when we had 3 months off from school, one of the jobs was, "Richard, I want you and your brother or your sister would have to go out there and I want you to pull the weeds around the lantana." And we got down on our hands and knees and no gloves, bare hands, pulling the weeds, and it wasn't until not too long ago, maybe many years, obviously, but nonetheless, I learned a method for pulling the weeds that worked, that helped to keep the weeds at a minimum for the next few months, even as my mother would water. And that is, you didn't pull the weeds out of the ground because usually you tore the top part off of the root and the root's still in the soil. You get a little shovel and you dig underneath and you pry up that root and you get that out of there, the whole thing. And that's something that I learned, and that's what we have to learn how to do is to, again, what you're saying is absolutely true. There's always going to be weeds. But again, if you're going to pull them, get under that root and pry it up and pull it out from the root. And it'll make room for the good seeds. There's another natural law too, another element, if you will, that I'll have you expound upon here, and that is this aspect of the example I'm going to use is of an oak tree, because we have many of oak trees up here on the hill where we live, and the leaves, they'll fall off after they've been there for whatever the duration is they're supposed to be. They fall to the ground. I don't rake them up. I let them decay and break down and turn into the soil. That's what it becomes. It becomes the soil. So it's kind of like the tree is nourishing itself by the dropping of these leaves onto the ground, letting them decay, and they turn into dirt, which raises the level of the ground, which is rather interesting. I experienced that. I put a fence around an oak tree, and this was for our dog run. And I put these, to keep the dogs from digging out, I put these long, large poles, about this diameter, up against the base of the fence on the outside. Well, as the leaves would fall, and of course, when I first put those poles there, you could see the underside of the pole. It was, that's the way it was. But as the years went on, the pole appeared to be sinking in the dirt. Well, of course, the reality was that the dirt was rising due to the leaves that had fallen and turning into the soil that made it look like the pole was sinking into the dirt. And that is the natural process of things in the natural world when we're talking about this. And sometimes the weeds themselves, if we want to shift back over there too, they don't live forever. However, the seeds that they grew from are certainly still in the ground, and it'll come back again when you get plenty of water and nourishment and so forth. But you also have this other element of soil, of the dirt that's coming from the plant growth that dies off and then returns to that process and starts it all over again every season. How about the seasons when we're talking about pulling up our own weeds and the seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall, that we go through, not so much in terms of age, but in terms of just going through that process of recognizing, oh, there are the weeds, I pull that one and so forth, and I'm going to plant these seeds over here and they're going to grow and germinate, and I'm going to give them the nourishment they need by, like you've suggested, reading, something every day, whether it's from a Real Impact or any other book that they should happen to pick up of inspiration and encouragement. Talk to us a little bit about that process.
I like what Jim Rohn would say. I really like Jim Rohn, and I suggest if you don't know who that is, you should go to YouTube and listen to what he has to say. He's no longer alive, but there's lots of his speeches on YouTube, and he's written several books. You can read his books. One of the things that gave me courage and made me feel better was he talked about the seasons, and that you could always count on the spring following the winter. Isn't that nice? If you go into a really, really tough patch in your life and you can compare that to the winter, well, the next thing's going to be spring, and then it's going to be summer. So that's something that you can take heart from, that nature has its cycles, and whatever is happening, no matter how bad it is, this too shall pass. Eventually, things are going to change. I'm thinking of a point in my life not too long ago where it seemed like everything came together at one time to create this, massive storm. And I wrote all of those things down on a piece of paper. And then I thought, I'm going to read this paper again after a time, and all of these things will have disappeared. And you know what? That's exactly what happened. It doesn't really, everything's going to change. Everything's eventually things are going to change. They may change for the worse, for the better, but however bad things are, Mother used to tell me, from the day that you're born till you ride in a hearse, nothing is so bad that it can't get worse. So if you're feeling bad, things could be worse. Just count your blessings.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I really appreciate my mother for. Every time I was down, she always made me sit down and start thinking about my blessings. And she'd get me started, think about your aunts and uncles and cousins, and that, that we have a car, and that we have family. She'd go through, and then she'd make me continue. And before long, I had totally forgotten why I was feeling bad, and I'd be outside playing again. Well, that was a pretty good habit to start a young person on. And I still have that habit 50, 60 years later. And I would suggest that everybody, gratitude's a great thing. It's very healthy. And we're all creatures of habit. So why not create a habit of gratitude? I often say when someone gets up in the morning, they always do the same thing. I mean, I've never been with you in the morning, Richard. I don't know. I've never been in your house, but I know this. Every morning when you wake up, you always do the same thing. You get out of the bed and you go either brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee. I mean, you do the same thing. It's a habit. And you're so sleepy, you can't think anyway, so you're just on cruise control. Why not form the habit when you wake up of gratitude? Change that habit to something really positive and start thinking, oh, it's a wonderful day. I'm alive. I can breathe. I don't have cancer. I mean, you think about you love your family and you have all these things that you're grateful. What a great way to start off your day, and you're not even out of the bed yet. So that's something that I highly suggest that you a habit that you form.
Absolutely. And of course, along those same lines, uh, everything is temporary. None of this is permanent. I mean, it emphasizes, you've said it well again, there's change. Change is the one constant in the universe. And again, that's the same thing as saying it's all temporary. Nothing lasts forever. As far as I know, even the universe won't last forever. It's going to last a long time, but I don't know what it'll be changed to. But actually, it's constantly changing as well when you take a look at things moving around and what have you. So that to me, that's fascinating. We're talking with Dennis Henson, Real Impact, realimpactbook.com. Get your free e-copy of the book. And we will continue as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. It is always a pleasure to have a conversation with Dennis Henson, and I hope that you folks are enjoying these conversations as we continue here on the conversation about Real Impact Daily Inspiration. We encourage you to go to realimpactbook.com to get your free e-copy of the book, and also maybe order a copy paperback or hardcover. We'd certainly like to encourage that. It's also available in Audible, and obviously we're kind of featuring those stories, those little Audible sections, and I think it's really kind of cool to be able to listen to the book. I do that in the car. It's something that I really enjoy, and I like. I become friends with the people who are reading, or if it's a dramatization, I become friends with the actors, the characters, and so forth. And when the book is over, it's like, that's it. Oh man, it's kind of like you're watching your favorite television series, and it goes on for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seasons, and then they bring it to a close. They wrap it up. Or what's even worse is, Dennis, they go for 1 or 2 or 3 seasons, and then they get canceled. Then there's never an explanation as to the fact that they're not going to be there next season. And it's like, but I was so close to them. I would have them over for Christmas dinner, that kind of thing. And that's the fun thing about all of this. I want to talk a little bit more about this aspect of, especially when it comes to sowing seeds to create community. Sometimes the word network is used, and both are fine. In terms of having people around you who can and will encourage you, inspire you, support you. They don't have to agree they don't have to agree with you and your plans, your dreams, your hopes and desires. But at least they're not knocking you down. They're not cutting you down. They're not discouraging you. Some may not be supporting you, but they're at least they're there as a friend. I mean, it could be relatives, your mother, your father, your parent, your sisters, your brothers. Let's talk a little bit about creating networking and planting seeds in that fashion.
The sixth of the 7 secrets of success is forming great alliances. If you can form alliances with people that you just described, people who will encourage you, who like to listen to you and tell you that you're on the right path, and they like you, it'll make life so much easier and success so much easier. And many times they'll help you. For example, our friendship, yours and mine, helped me because it helps get the word out. And my goal is to get the word out about the book. So you're helping me do that. The number one way that a book has success is through word of mouth. And so you're kind of a special word of mouth because you're talking to a great number of people. And if those people that are listening in, whether they even get the book or not, if they just tell someone else about it, if they tell a young person about it and say, you should try this book, it may help you feel better. Maybe they're going through a tough patch, or maybe they're graduating from high school or college and don't know what it is they want out of life. Well, suggest that they read this book, Real Impact, gift that I could afford to give to my the person that works with me, their son's graduating or their daughter's graduating. This would be something that over a long period of time will help a lot of people, and people don't trouble you, especially if you're older and you have grandchildren. You certainly want them to remember you after you're gone. Give them this book and put something nice in the front of it, and they may have it when they're your age.
Well, we encourage certainly people to go out and get a copy of the book. Dennis, I want to thank you once again for the opportunity to share this time with you. We've got a lot more coming up in the coming weeks and months here in 2025, and I think that even though there will be those times people are going to say, "Well, yeah, but they said that back there 2 weeks ago, and 4 weeks ago, and 6 weeks ago," there is something about repetition, isn't there?
Absolutely. Repetition is a great form of learning.
Yeah. Well, we will be repeating a lot here, and of course, I'm going to be repeating the title of the book and all of that good stuff. And we currently, certainly encourage you to go to Daily Impact. That's actually Real Impact, Daily Inspiration. RealImpactBook.com is the website to get your free ebook, your e-copy, if you will. And we hope that you will join us every week at the same time as we continue this series dealing with Dennis Henson's work and his book, The Collection of Stories, Poems, and quotes, as well as books, both in his bibliography as well as in the list of books that he has placed in there that he encourages you to seek out and find. And I think that's one of the real telling points, Dennis, is that this is not about you or me as much as a lot of people might think that it is. This is about other people. This is about the people who are listening and watching and reading to help them to move forward. And I'll use the quote I've used many, many times. I am not here to be successful. I am here to make you successful. In turn, that makes me successful. And that's really what we're all about here, Dennis. I really do believe that. And the way that you're going about it, I think there's a lot of integrity that you show and share in this program and in this process. And I thank you for being a part of what we're doing here on Tell Me Your Story.
Well, thank you for having me, Richard. This is really a great thing. I enjoy it very much.
As do I. And folks, I hope you do too. And we'll continue this series next week at the same time as we continue with Real Impact, a daily inspiration here on Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world, giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.